Record the serial numbers on the bike and battery, located on the shipping label. Photograph all 4 sides of the bike box and ensure a picture of the label with the serial numbers is easy to read. Unpack the bike. Carefully open the box and unpack. Remove the small box and then the front wheel. Remove the bike from the box and prop it on the kickstand. Carefully remove the packaging from the bike and recycle where possible. The small box contains the stem faceplate and hardware, manual, charger, pedals, and the assembly toolkit. The assembly toolkit includes 3, 4, and 5mm Allen wrenches, a combination Phillips and flathead screwdriver, and size 8 and 10, 13 and 15, and 16 and 18mm wrenches. Other recommended tools include flat side cutters, a torque wrench with 4 and 5mm bits, a pedal wrench, and bicycle grease. Install the handlebar. Rotate the handlebar into place so the handlebar ends angle back toward the rider. Install the stem faceplate. Use a 5mm Allen wrench to loosely install the 4 bolts. Adjust the handlebar to be in line with the front fork. Trace the front brake cable from the caliper to the left brake lever to ensure the cables are not twisted. Use a torque wrench with a 5mm Allen bit to evenly torque the 4 stem faceplate bolts to 10 Nm. Install the pedals. Apply a small amount of bicycle grease to the pedal threads and inspect the pedal axles. The right pedal has a smooth axle and is standard threaded. The left pedal axle has notches and is reverse threaded, so it tightens counterclockwise. Use a pedal wrench to torque each pedal to 35 Nm.
Depending on when your bike was manufactured, it is possible that you may receive a bike with either a front wheel with a bolt-on axle mechanism or a quick-release skewer mechanism. Remove the protective plates from the front wheel and inspect the axle. Front wheels with the bolt-on axle will come with pre-installed nuts on the axle. If you have this type of front wheel, proceed with the following steps. Front wheels with the quick-release mechanism will have a shorter through axle where the quick-release skewer is inserted. If you have this type of front wheel, skip to the next section. During assembly, be careful not to touch the brake rotor, which has sharp edges and can cause serious injury, and leave oils from your hand on the brake rotor, which can lead to diminished braking performance. Rest the front wheel on its side with the brake rotor facing up. Front wheel with bolt-on axle installation. Use these steps to install a front wheel with a bolt-on axle. Locate and remove the quick-release skewer that holds the fork on the fork protector plate. Open the lever, remove the thumb nut and cone spring on the opposite side, and remove the skewer. The fork and wheel protector plate packaging, including skewer, thumb nut, cone springs, and any spacers, are not used for the front wheel installation and can be recycled according to local rules. Fold up the kickstand and have a friend hold the bike upright and steady for the next few steps while you position and secure the wheel. Loosen the pre-installed axle nuts on the front wheel enough to fit in the fork dropouts, but do not remove them. If the front wheel comes with additional washers, position these against the axle nuts for installation. If there's a spacer between the brake pads and the front caliper, remove it now. With the help of a friend, carefully lift the front of the bike and lower the fork onto the wheel so that the brake rotor enters the caliper between the brake pads, and the axle enters the fork dropouts fully. Pay attention to the brake rotor. It needs to slide between the brake pads. Once the rotor is between the brake pads, guide the fork onto the wheel so that the wheel axle enters the fork dropouts. If it's difficult to get the brake rotor between the brake pads, you may need to loosen the brake calipers slightly. Use an Allen wrench to widen the gap between the brake pads by turning the inner pad adjuster out counterclockwise 2 clicks. Stop after you feel 2 clicks or have turned the adjustment bolt 1/4 to 1/2 of a full rotation. When wheel installation is complete, you can turn the pad adjuster back in clockwise if necessary to ensure the brakes engage properly. Check that the wheel is fully seated in the fork dropouts on both sides, the wheel axle is level and parallel to the ground, and that the wheel is centered. Use the 15mm wrench to tighten the axle nuts on both sides of the fork until secure. If the front wheel comes with additional washers, make sure they are positioned against the axle nuts before tightening. Use a torque wrench with a 15mm socket head or crowfoot bit to torque the axle nuts to the value specified in your owner's manual. Test your front wheel installation. Check that the same amount of dropout is visible under the axle on both sides of the fork. If there's a difference, your axle is not fully inserted into both dropouts, and you'll need to repeat the previous steps. If the axle is fully seated, perform the following tests. With your friend holding the front of the bike off the ground, spin the front wheel to ensure it has no wobble or looseness. Second, while straddling the bike with your hands on the handlebars, squeeze the front brake lever with your left hand. Rock the bike forward and backward and ensure the front brake is securely keeping the front wheel from turning and that there's no play or wiggle in the wheel, handlebars, or front fork. Any sign of play or wiggle is a sign that you may not have properly secured the front wheel, and you should repeat the installation process. Perform these tests before every ride. Once your wheel is fully installed and tested for security, skip ahead to the Inflate Tires section. Front wheel with quick release skewer installation. Use these steps to install a front wheel with a quick release skewer. Do not touch the brake rotor. Rest the wheel gently on its side with the brake rotor facing up. Locate the quick release skewer holding the front fork in the fork protector plate. Open the lever, remove the thumb nut and cone spring on the opposite side of the lever to remove the fork protector plate. Then, remove the skewer from the protector plate, keeping the cam follower and the other cone spring in place. Pass the skewer through the wheel hub, starting from the side without the brake disc or rotor. Reinstall the cone spring on the other side. Both cone springs should point inward, toward the wheel hub. Thread the thumb nut just a couple of turns, leaving enough space for the fork dropouts, which are the slots in the fork where the axle goes. The fork packaging includes a fork protector plate with a metal spacer rod and some spacers, which may be black plastic or look like thick metal washers. You can recycle these packaging elements according to local rules. Fold up your kickstand. Have a friend hold the bike steady and fully upright for the next few steps while you position and secure the wheel. If there's a spacer between the brake pads and the front caliper, remove it now. Make sure the quick release lever is open. Then carefully lift the front of the bike. Pay attention to the brake rotor. It needs to slide between the brake pads. Once the rotor is between the brake pads, guide the fork onto the wheel so that the wheel axle enters the fork dropouts. The axle needs to go all the way into the dropouts. If it's difficult to get the brake rotor between the brake pads, you may need to loosen the brake calipers slightly. Use an Allen wrench to widen the gap between the brake pads by turning the inner pad adjuster out or counterclockwise. 2 clicks. Stop after you feel 2 clicks or have turned the adjustment bolt 1/4 to 1/2 of a full rotation. When wheel installation is complete, you can turn the adjuster pad back in, if necessary, to ensure the brakes engage properly. Check that the wheel is centered and the axle is fully inserted in the dropouts. If the quick release lever is resting on the widest part of the cam follower, like this, turn it slightly so that it nestles into the curve of the cam follower. This is how it should look. Make sure that your friend holding the bike steady has it fully upright with some weight on the front wheel to help ensure that the fork is fully and evenly inserted onto the axle. Again, do not rely on a kickstand to steady your bike. Open the quick release lever all the way. Hold the thumb nut steady with one hand while you spin the quick release lever clockwise with the other hand. Tighten it as much as you can by hand. At this point, the lever should be too tight for you to close halfway. Loosen it by a 1/4 turn and try again. Repeat until you can close the lever halfway. Close the lever. This should be difficult and should leave an imprint in your hand. Fine-tuning the tightness can take several tries. If you are not able to exert great force on the quick release lever, get help from a professional bike mechanic. double check that the closed lever isn't touching any bike components like the fork or a fender bracket, which could keep it from closing completely. Check that the same amount of dropout is visible under the axle on each side of the bike. If there's a difference, your axle is not fully inserted into both dropouts, and you'll need to repeat the previous steps, starting at the point where you check that both cone springs are pointing inward. Perform 3 tests on your front wheel. First, with your helper holding the front of the bike off the ground, spin the front wheel to ensure it has no wobble or looseness. Second, while straddling the bike with hands on the handlebars, squeeze the front brake lever with your left hand. Rock the bike forward and backward and ensure the front brake is securely keeping the front wheel from turning and that there's no play or wiggle in the wheel, handlebars, or front forks. Third, inspect the quick release lever and ensure it has remained tightly closed and is not touching the front fork or any other part of the bike. Any sign of play or wiggle is a sign that you may not have properly secured the front wheel and that you should repeat the installation process. Perform these tests before every ride. Once your wheel is fully installed and tested for security, you may prop your bike on its kickstand.
Inflate the tires. Check that the tire bead and tires are evenly seated around the rim. Use a pump with a Schrader valve and a pressure gauge to inflate each tire to the recommended pressure indicated on the tire sidewall. To install the headlight, use a 10mm wrench and a 5mm Allen wrench to remove the lock nut, bolt, and 2 washers from the fork. Pass the bolt through the front washer, the headlight mount, and the front fork. On the back side of the fork, install the rear washer and then the lock nut. Align the headlight and torque to 6 Nm. Use a 10mm wrench and a 4mm Allen wrench to loosen the headlight adjustment bolt. Adjust the light slightly down from horizontal so it will illuminate the ground in front of the bike and does not blind oncoming traffic. Align the notches on the inside of the red 2-pin connector and the small arrows on the outside of the connector and press the 2 sides together without twisting to fully seat the connection. Ensure the switch at the back of the headlight is in the on position. Check the chain tensioner alignment. Stand at the back of the bike and look at the drivetrain. Ensure the hanger is straight and the jockey wheel on the chain tensioner is aligned directly below the freewheel. If anything looks askew, contact our product support team. Set the desired seat height. Rotate the seat post quick release lever up to clear the rear rack tubing and then open fully. Ensure the seat post clamp opening is aligned with the notch in the seat tube. Adjust the seat post up or down to a comfortable height, making sure the minimum insertion point stays inside the frame. Use the thumb nut to add tension to the clamp so there is some resistance when the lever is in line with the clamp bolt, but do not over tighten. Close the quick release lever to secure the seat post and check that the seat cannot move up or down or twist. Remove the keys. Ensure the key port is aligned with the on locked position, indicating the battery is powered on and locked to the bike. Remove the key and carefully use both hands to pull up on the battery to test that the lock is secure. Consult a certified, reputable, and local bike mechanic for assistance with assembly and properly fitting the bike to a rider.
Work through the safety checklist in the owner's manual and test the bike fully before riding. Never let anyone operate this bike unless they are at least 16 years old and have read the operating instructions detailed in the owner's manual. The age requirement for e-bikes may be older than 16 in your area. Check your local laws and rules for the areas you intend to ride. Whenever you ride, wear closed-toe shoes, comfortable clothing, and of course, a helmet. Make sure you can be seen by others on the road by wearing bright and reflective clothing and ensuring your headlight and taillight are always on and visible to others. Like all vehicles, e-bikes need to be checked regularly to ensure nothing will jeopardize your safety or the safety of those around you. Follow all safety instructions and checklists in the owner's manual. The latest update to the owner's manual for your rad bike is always available on our website at radpowerbikes.com/help. Make it a habit to thoroughly check your bike before every ride. Reach out to our product support team if you have any questions. And ride rad!